Hi, this is Brent Raymond back with the fourth segment in our Welcome to CITI video list. This one is focused on batch change and batch create. Again, I'm Brent Raymond in the Information Services Department at the Art Institute of Chicago. I can be reached at bramo@arctic.edu or at the user group website 40method, 40method@gmail.com or 40method.wordpress.com, the website itself. So let's get right to taking a look at batch change. Batch change is either accessible through the Enter menu here, which will bring up an empty batch change window where you can drag records into it, select a table such as objects. You can drag records into it from a manager, or you can load them from a briefcase. I'll go ahead and load my essential art briefcase. That's one way to get to it, or you can get to it directly from a manager. We'll go ahead and bring up my essential art, and we'll select batch change from the area menu. If you don't want to have all of these records, you can select to remove selected or limit the selection to the ones that you have highlighted, or you can go ahead and open the objects that you have selected just to make sure that those are the ones that you want. So now that we're in the batch change interface here, I'd just like to take a moment to say batch change, if you have access to it, is very powerful. You can change all of the data and all of the fields that you have access to in very short order. You ought not to do batch changes on large selections of records during work hours too much, because it will tie up the server for some time, depending on how large the selection is and how intense the process is to batch change the records. However, now, that being said, let's take a look at some simple batch change options. Down here we have a field pop up where you can select from a list of all the fields that are batch changeable in CITI, which are most of them, or you can just do a type ahead, for instance object type, and then it loads the value of that field into this last column of the record list above. The record list consists of some identifying columns such as the main reference number for the artwork, the artist culture, title, and then whichever field that you have selected. If you'd like to, right, so we have object type selected right now. You can again select another kind of object type, such as set it to set them all to painting. This isn't a very practical example because seldom will you actually want to change an artwork's object type in a batch format. However, these are the kind of things that you can do. Again, this is there's type ahead in this area down here, so you can go ahead and select vessel. As you notice, the row color for all of these records are changing. It will change the color of all the rows that will be modified by this batch change. This record in turn won't be modified because it's already a vessel. So if we change this to painting, then only these records will be changed. So that's an example of a field that has a restricted number of values that you can choose from. let's take a look at a free entry field like credit line. In the data list here, you can actually see all of the credit lines for each of these objects. You can see what the current value of the credit line is and what the value will be once it's modified. We haven't set any modification yet for any of these objects, so none of the records are highlighted and both of these match. However, let's go ahead and see what actions are available for a text batch change. You can insert text at the beginning of the text of the credit line. As the description says here, inserts the following text at the beginning of the field. You can append that text at the end of the field. You can find a word or a phrase and replace it with another phrase. You can also do this in a text-sensitive or case-sensitive manner, matching capital letters. Or you can replace the entire credit line field, the contents, with what the text is that you have written here. So if you want every credit line to read blah blah blah, this is how you would do it. You can see that it highlighted each of the records that are going to be edited. Let's go ahead and instead change the text to Joseph, and select to find and replace Joseph with Funk. Only the records that have the word Joseph in the credit line will be affected by this batch change. When you're satisfied with that batch change, then you'll go ahead and apply. But let's take a look at a few more field types. Another one might be, let's see, fiscal year acquisition. You can set it to a new numeric year. For numeric fields, the entry here is limited to numeric values. You can also batch change fields that have complicated related values, such as committee, for instance. Committee is a list of meetings by year that the object was discussed. So this is a more complicated example where it traverses several tables, to speak in technical terms. So let's take a look at the interface for editing this field. First, you'll be presented with a drop-down of all years where there are available committees to add or edit for an object. Let's look at 2014. Here are all the committees that are available for this particular year. The dash mark means do nothing. So if you would like to remove this committee value, you'd set it to an empty block. If you'd like to add this Asian art committee meeting, you would change it to a check mark. You can also set what was discussed in the meeting for this particular field. You can set it to, for instance, acquisition. So in this meeting, acquisition was discussed. And all of them will be added. We'll have this particular value added. Now, for instance, this field has these have a particular meeting from 2006, and we'd be able to go in and remove each of these if we wanted to. using the same process, but just unchecking that box in particular. Let's take a look at another field. For instance, dates. It's also a bit of a complex field because multiple dates can be associated with multiple records with different qualifiers. For instance, designed, cast, built, patented, modeled in what year, written in what year, and whether or not this is the preferred date for this particular object. So the list shows a distinct list of all dates that exist in the selected records that are in the background there. So if we wanted to subtract one of the years, or let's take a look at what we might want to do, say 2006. Let's go ahead and subtract the year 2006. And it shows that we'll be editing that record. Alternatively, we could add that record, that date, to all of the records that need it. As you see here, this record doesn't need any changes because it already has 2006. Or we could add a qualifier for that date to say that's when these objects were made. In that case, 2006 will get another date with a qualifier, as you see here, it says made. And the action here shows adding or updating 2006 with the qualifier made. Let's take a look at, let's do one more thing here. If you don't see the date that you want to add, then you can add another date to the list, 2020, and use it like you would otherwise. So let's take a look at one more field. Again, a bit of a complex field. Oops, double-clicking on the records will open the object, as I mentioned. Again, this is a list of all the current related fields to the records in the list. If you want to add another one, and you click here and you enter the place name code. The place name code can be found in the place record in the place manager. Oops, we need to exit this and go ahead into the place manager. For instance, let's look at Germany or Munich and open Munich. The place name code would be stored here under shortcut. And then you'd be able to use it to attach it to one of the objects in batch change. In this particular field, you can set a place to preferred with various qualifiers, and whether or not it's a current, historical, or topographical field. Again, with just a Boolean set value. So we won't actually, because this is a live system, perform any batch changes unless we can find a field very quickly, which would be a bit innocuous to change. But let's not do that right now. Let's actually we can go ahead and do it. For instance, with imaging notes, and we'll limit this batch change to one field or one record. just in case something happens. We'll add some test text there. As you can see, it will make note of the fact that I was the one who did the batch change, and that is okay. As you select the record, you can see what the current value of the record is and what the modified version will be, and then you can click Apply. It'll ask you, are you sure you would like to batch change one record? Say yes. You have the option to automatically to add your own additional text into the cataloging history. And I'll add some text that says test batch try and say that quickly. Test batch change. And we've successfully batch changed the record. And now let's go ahead and replace the entire text with nothing. So the new text will be modified to have a blank value. And optionally we can say no thank you, or test batch change reverted. Great. So that's batch change, a very powerful feature. However, with great power comes great responsibility, as Spider-Man's father says, I think, or said. Let's take a quick look at batch create. Sometimes it's necessary to create a larger number of records for new artworks that are coming in. We've made that easy with this menu command, batch create. You're able to create any number of records. Again, if you're going to create a larger number of records, do this during slower hours at the museum. You can preset a department. It's auto-populated with your department name. You can assign accession numbers automatically to the new object records. And then check availability of the new accession numbers. We have to actually select, say, 5 for the number of records, and then check availability of the new accession numbers for those fields, for those records. You can select an object to be the master of the new objects that you're making. So if you have, say, a chessboard, with the chessboard would be the master object. All of the parts of the chessboard would be you'd put in the master ID here, and then all the new records would be the parts. Likewise, you can select a set that that these objects would go into. Okay, that's just a quick overview of batch change and batch create. And thanks for listening. I'm Brent Raymond, and I hope you found the video informative. Thank you.